Clemson football is in a peculiar place. Is peculiar the word? I don't know. I'm just using words. So I wanted to bring on one of my friends, someone I know who knows college football. So who did I reach out to? Tiger Paul Craven from Clemson at the voice of college football. But I was having a hard time of getting his co-host Jordan Bowman on. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to bring on Tiger Paul Craven, and by the power of recording later on and putting it together, you're going to see Jordan too. So, without further ado, whatever that means, Tiger Paul Craven, thanks for coming on the show, my man.
Hey, Brian, it's good to see you, man. Thanks for having me on.
It's my fault you haven't been on much sooner. I kept fumbling the scheduling. Thank you for being patient with me, and instead of deleting my emails, responding. So,
Absolutely, man. Hey, look, we all got lives. YouTube is not our life, contrary
it's
to
not.
what some people believe. We all got jobs outside of this that we got to do and families we got to take care of. So, anytime I can come on, I'm more than happy to do it.
I appreciate you doing it. Let's get right into it. Clemson has a bye week, and this is after they've ran through multiple teams, beating the crap out of bad teams, and you're supposed to beat bad teams bad. And then they have a bye week. They play a team that is not bad, but they're not elite.
Right.
And they are, other than yardage, they're totally dominated on the scoreboard. Clemson looked anemic when it comes to just this energy and a sense of urgency. And that goes back to the coaching staff, folks. What was your thoughts, TPC, when you saw that? Were you yelling at the TV? I mean, what was going through your head?
Honestly, Brian, it's interesting. I've had somewhat of an evolution, I feel like, over the past couple of years when it comes to Clemson football. I don't know if it's, I'm getting a little bit older and I'm maturing, but I do not get as amped up during games as I used to. I don't get as animated, if you will. Before I used to get really into it, and I still do to some degree. But I've matured to a point where I can kind of control myself during games. But Saturday really tried my patience. I mean, watching Clemson trot out there on the field and just absolutely lay an egg against this Louisville team. And I said it on me and Jordan's show. We do a post-game live show after every single game. And I said it during the show. I congratulated, Jeff Brom, the Louisville team, their fans, because they deserve congratulating. But Clemson went out there and absolutely handed the game to them. They played terrible. Their defense was horrible. Their offense, those first two drives probably could not have been any worse. I think every pass outside of one was behind the line of scrimmage, and none of them were working. They were all tackled for loss or just getting back to the line of scrimmage. There was no attacking downfield. It seemed like that Clemson's game plan or Clemson's coaching staff had never seen a cover two. Or not a cover two, a too high safety look, because apparently they couldn't call a play to beat it, which there's plenty of plays to do that. But, this game on Saturday was just the epitome, and it just kind of brought you back down to earth as a Clemson fan, right? Because, to your credit, Brian, you have been probably number one in beating the drum of let's pump the brakes. We're beating up on bad teams. And to your credit, unfortunately, you were right about it, right? So you come out of the Georgia game and you're pretty deflated and you're like, man, this offense is unchanged. It's the same as it's always been. And then you rattle off the next, 6 games or so and you beat up on some teams and you beat them pretty badly. And you start thinking, and even myself coming into the season, my whole mantra was cautious optimism, right? I'm hoping that this offense develops. I'm hoping that they get better. And I started to buy in a little bit and then right back down to earth for this Louisville because it looked like that offense was unchanged. And it's really unfortunate. And you don't control your own destiny. I don't want to hear any Clemson fans talking about the playoffs. This team has no business in the playoffs. And you're not going to the ACC championship game. I don't care how you try to spider web it into this scenario and that scenario. You're not getting into the ACC championship game, and you're not going to the playoffs because you don't deserve to.
Clemson was down at one point 26-7 at home at night. I want you to sit and think about that. I mean, anyone who's heard about how crazy it can get at Death Valley at night,
Mm.
it is as advertised. So you have the crowd on your side. You have a 6-game winning streak on your side. You supposedly have some continuity. And, of course, the offensive line has gotten better. They have.
Yeah.
But you see a lack of scheme, and there's just always an excuse around the corner. Before we came on here, and I told you, I said I don't listen to post-game or midweek conferences anymore. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I never receive any information there that actually helps me. A lot of times it makes me more angry to hear some of the comments. But Coach Sweeney said this week, we don't coach our destiny anymore, but you know what we do control? Our decision-making, our effort. Your thoughts on that comment when it refers to Louisville? I mean, what's your thoughts when you hear that just a few days after blowing it at home to a team that had never beat them since they joined the conference?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's so many firsts here that it's almost comical the way that Clemson lost that game, getting gashed on the ground time and time again. I mean, when's the last time you've seen a Clemson defense get manhandled on the ground like that consistently over 4 quarters of a game? I mean, it's just mind-boggling to me. And a comment like, we don't control our own destiny, but what we do control is how we respond. I mean, that's all well and good, but honestly, I mean, my thoughts on it is nobody wants to hear that right now. Take responsibility, take accountability for not having your team prepared. Stop with the slogans, stop with the cliches, and let's actually light a fire under this coaching staff and under this team, because to me, that really seems to be what has been lost at Clemson over, the past 4 or 5 years. The fire, the desire to win, the unwavering dedication to putting the best product out on the field as possible. What happened to Dabo's famous quote of "best is the standard"? The fun is in the winning. All of that sort of stuff, all the rhetoric that he created and now suddenly criticizes in Clemson fans because we're spoiled and, whatever the case may be, when we're really just maintaining the standard that you set here. And I know it's hard to win games in college football, so save me with those comments. I get it. It's not easy to win, but this is not a team. If you are truly getting back to the level that Clemson used to be, this is not a team that should have beat you. Not to mention, Brian, I'll ask you this, since you mentioned the whole night game thing and how good Clemson's been in the Valley, specifically at night. Do you know the stat on when the last time Clemson lost a night game in the Valley was?
You know what? I don't, but I think it would go before 2016. Am I correct?
It is before 2016.
Yeah.
You got to go all the way back to 2013, Florida
Wow.
State, when they came in there and splattered Clemson over their home field with Jameis Winston and company.
Yeah, that was not a good one. Yeah, at first I was about to say Pittsburgh, but I remember that was like a 3:30 kickoff.
Yeah, that was an afternoon game. Yep.
Yeah, that was not a night game. Now we have Virginia Tech this coming week, a team that if you go and you look at their schedule, if you think losing like Louisville has lost this year, they've lost 3 games by 7 points. It gets even bothersome with a Virginia Tech team who lost to Vanderbilt. We all made fun of them for losing to Vanderbilt because, well, you can't blame us. Well, Vanderbilt's not Vanderbilt. They lost by 7 there. The biggest head scratcher of the season to me is losing to Rutgers. They lost by 3 points there. They lost to Miami by 4 points. They lost to Syracuse this past week by 7 points. I believe their starting quarterback got hurt. Don't quote me on that. But my point in all of this is we knew you had to take not Syracuse, you had to take Louisville seriously. I'm going to say crazy. I don't know what my problem is. I'm going crazy. You had to take them seriously. But you look at this team and you see how many points they've lost by and how close they are to being undefeated legitimately. I mean, Is this loss number 2?
It certainly could be, Brian. I mean, at this point, I have to go by the, the assumption that anything can happen as far as Clemson football goes so far this year. I mean, you mentioned the 2 losses that we have, obviously Georgia and now Louisville, the 2 best teams that we played. We lost, and we didn't, and the games weren't particularly close either. Everybody can point to the 450 yards on offense, but let's face it, most of that yardage was chewed up in the fourth quarter when Louisville was more than happy to allow you to chew clock on a 12-13 play drive and go get a field goal blocked. They were more than happy to allow you to do that. And then they were more than happy to allow you to go score a touchdown and chew up another 12-13 play drive. So people pointing to the 450 yards of total offense, don't care, doesn't matter. It was essentially in garbage time, and you played right into what Louisville wanted you to do. And then you turn the page, Brian, and you think about a Virginia Tech team that you're traveling to, right? They got a spirited fan base. They got an environment down there that will be extremely ready to receive Clemson. They will come in believing that they can knock this team off, because why shouldn't they believe that? Oh, and by the way, they got a pretty good running game. And guess who's not going to play this week? Peter Woods. Guess who else is not going to play this week? DeMonte Capehart.
Oh, God.
So anytime you can clearly see with this defense, specifically Peter Woods, anytime he is out, we struggle immensely to set the edge. We're not great at it even when he's in, but when he's out, it's almost night and day with setting the edge. I don't feel great about that. I really don't. And even if he does happen to muster up the ability to play this weekend, what is his health going to be? How effective
and
is he going to be?
The last thing we want to do is send the guy out there, get him hurt. I mean, he's incredible. I mean, ever since that Appalachian State crap that went on, I mean, it's bad. And to add insult to injury, literal injury, to go out and play mundane football. The offense went back in its shell. I know you watch my show some. You hear me talking about my greatest fear was that the offense would go back in its shell. There would be a lack of creativity. We saw that this past week. Why should we have any hope, belief, optimism that Clemson comes back out of that shell, gets creative, looks at the defense and goes, hey, this is not a defense that no one's ever seen before. And especially when you're at the coaching level of Clemson, you should be ready for this. Do we see them come out of their shell, chalk it up to just being, I don't know what went on in the off week, but do we see them come out of their shell, or do we see them continue to run into a dark corner and hide when they play a team that'll actually hit them in the mouth? What's your thoughts?
My thoughts are, and I'll quote Cade Klubnik in his post-game interview, right? He said, I'm pissed off. We're pissed off. I'm not even sad. I'm just pissed off. So I hope that is the case. I hope that is the sentiment throughout the team, because we'll find out truly what this team is made of this week and how they're going to respond. And that goes for the coaching staff too, because this coaching staff needs to get it together. They should be absolutely embarrassed as an entire coaching staff for what Louisville did to them this past Saturday, because they absolutely outcoached them. And I know Dabo came out and said, yeah, we got outcoached today. Yeah, okay, that's fine to come out in a press conference and say it, but what are you going to do about it going forward? There has to be a fire lit under this team, specifically this coaching staff, to start paying attention to the details, to start doing the little things right, to start putting your players in a position to win a football game, because I don't think the coaching staff did that against Louisville. And you can talk about execution of the players, and absolutely, there were points in time in the game where everybody on that field did not execute and did not do their jobs at different points in times. But at the end of the day, when you see the offensive plan that we trotted out there, was that really going to be successful if they executed a little better? I don't think so. Same thing with the defense. It was a lack of adjustments. It was a lack of putting players in an advantageous way to get the job done. So honestly, my questions going into this week are for the coaching staff. What kind of plan are they going to put together? And when that plan starts to not work, are you going to have the ability to adjust and move on to plan B, plan C, plan whatever to get the job done and get a win, instead of just doing the exact same thing over and over again and be like, oh, well, we don't know why it's not working. I mean, that's just where I'm at right now. I'm beyond frustrated with the performance that happened this past Saturday, if you couldn't tell.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Trust me. I've had a few cardiac events since, and I'm kind of like you as I've aged, and I don't know if it's age, I don't know if it's changing priorities, I don't know what it may be. A little more gray in my beard, as I say. But I did find myself in the fourth quarter yelling, "You have to move faster. You have to call plays faster. You have to speed up." And all the while, I'm watching multicast with my oldest. He's a Gamecock fan. And I'm watching South Carolina absolutely demoralize the only undefeated SEC team. And it was literally like watching. I mean, it was literally two different games. You're like, duh. But I'm just saying, like, two different levels. And it was sad because I never thought that I would live to say that at this point. Let's move just a little quicker here. We have a fan base that appreciates Coach Swinney. We don't want the guy fired.
Right.
But we still are hearing some thoughts, comments from people who it's almost like they're shaming you if you look at Coach Swinney and say, Coach, you had 2 national championships by the time you were 48. By the time you were 48, you had 2 national championships. For kind of a benchmark here to bring, make everybody realize what's going on. Nick Saban didn't start coaching at Alabama until he was 55. Right. So think about that. So Dabo Swinney had 2 national championships, and at 48, Nick Saban only had 1, right? So my point is, I believe that Dabo Swinney, if tomorrow he decided, I want to have the best coaching staff in the country, I mean, truly the best coaching staff in the country, and I think we have some coaches there. Matt Luke is definitely elite, but from top to bottom, he could be right back in the picture. You also do need to consider how bad the ACC truly is. Yeah, I mean, it's yes, Louisville is not terrible. They're a good football team. They're not great, though. Clemson, by talent, should have beat them. Clemson, by longevity of brand, should have beat them. At home, at night, should have beat them. What is your message to anyone who's trying to shame some of us guys who's going, hey, we don't want Swinney to take his ball and go home. But we are looking at him going, dude, what is up?
Yeah, I mean, look, and again, nobody wants Dabo Swinney fired. Like, any Clemson fan that wants Dabo Swinney fired at this point, like, I don't know what you're talking about. And that's not what we're saying. But again, just because you brought 2 national titles to Clemson and you built Clemson and you made Clemson what it is, and, you sprungboard Clemson into the upper echelon of college football and being considered one of the powerhouse programs, one of the programs that have a shot to win a national title year in and year out. Just because you did all those things does not mean that there cannot be regression, right? It doesn't mean that certain parts of your program, it doesn't mean that those certain parts of your program can't erode, that you can't get a little complacent, a little too comfortable, a little too resting on your laurels, if you will, right? We are all humans, and Dabo Swinney is a human as well. And it is hard sometimes when you've been as successful as he is and as well compensated as he is,
right?
To wake up with that fire and that tenacity every single morning to, I'm going to go out execute everybody. I'm going to go outwork everybody. I'm going to continue to build and maintain this program that I have built, right? Sometimes it's usually not big things. It's little things that start to slip. here and there, and then suddenly they snowball, and then sometimes you realize it too late, but you look back and you're like, wow, oh man, how did I let all that happen, right? And my
Right.
whole point in saying all that is I just want Dabo Swinney to just really be honest with himself and look in the mirror and be like, I'm freaking Dabo Swinney, dude. Like, I built Clemson, which was basically a nobody in the world of elite college football, and
Right.
I made them a part of that conversation. I forced everyone to put Clemson in that conversation because of the coaches that I hired, because of the players that I recruited, and because of the way I ran my program. I need to get back to that because he's still that coach. He has the ability. We just need him to get back to that and become that competitor that he has always been, that same competitor that took over as an intern in 08 with basically no shot to win, to get the job, to then winning the job, to everybody telling Clemson you're a bunch of idiots for hiring him, to then turning it into a pretty decent program and eventually springboarding it into 2 national titles, 6 straight playoff wins, all the success, right?
Mm.
Somehow you got to unlock that fire. That same way you approached building the program, you have to figure out a way to bring that same fire to maintain what you've built, which is one of the hardest things to do. Nick Saban's talked about it in the past. There's been some successful people, even out in business, that talk about it's a lot easier to build something than it is to maintain something. Well, after the first decade of Dabo, right, he went into a maintaining phase. You had already reached the top of the mountain twice. Now you got to maintain it, and that's hard. And I think that's some of Dabo's struggles right now, trying to navigate how to maintain the great success and the great standard that he is, that he set at Clemson. And that's not easy, but you got to figure it out because right now we're on a steady decline.
Absolutely. And for clarification, even to kind of tag on to what you said there, and I really like how you put that. I think that people needs to understand that the criticism that we have of him is actually out of respect for who he is.
Yeah.
Like if we were offering him sympathy, like, oh man, the guy was a winner and now he's a loser, that is truly disrespectful.
Mm.
Or if I look at him and I go, well, look, guys, he gave us some great years, but he just can't do it anymore. Which is more respectful?
Right.
That, or looking at the guy going, dude, you're 54 years old. Saban took over Bama at 55. Man, I mean, come on. And Bama, as much as, and a lot of people who are absolute, they're younger. All they've known is in elite Alabama. Folks, I can tell you right now, as an early 40s male, I remember when Alabama was not that good. Beating Alabama was not that big of a deal. And it was there when Saban took over. He did not take over this incredible program. He took over a team that would be about the equivalent of Tennessee before they hired Josh Heupel. Something kind of like that. Mm-hmm. So for me, I'm actually showing more respect to Coach Swinney by looking at him and saying, man, what's the deal? What's the deal? I mean, you're not a geriatric. Right. So TPC, I'm going to be talking to your co-host Jordan Bowman at the Clemson at the Voice of College Football. I just totally butchered that. Any closing thoughts you just want to offer to Clemson fans, not only about this Virginia Tech game, maybe the season, just anything that's kind of wandering around in your mind?
Yeah. What I'd say to Clemson fans is, look, I know we are critical of the program and we are critical of Dabo Swinney. And just like you put very well, Brian, it's not out of we're not being malicious. It's not out of hate. It's out of love for the program. I mean, I've spent my entire life following this program and being a fanatic of the Clemson Tigers and more specifically the Clemson football program. So I know a lot of our comments upset people and it really irritates Clemson fans. But we truly do. Like, I just believe that Clemson can be more. We've seen it. There's no reason that this program should be in regression right now. And if you're being honest with yourself, we are in regression. So you got to own that. You got to be able to admit that. We can't lie to ourselves as fan bases. But going forward this season, obviously you just got to keep supporting the team. You got to hope that they can turn it around. The last thing I want to do is lose the last 4 games of the season, right? Specifically that very last game of the season.
Of
That's
course.
looking more and more losable. But you got to hope this coaching staff goes back to the drawing board and that they can get these guys to continue to buy in, because that's the issue you're going to run into now, because everything Clemson was playing for went out the window on Saturday. There is no ACC championship. There is no playoffs. You're playing for a bowl game at this point. What bowl game? Well, that'll determine on how many games you win to finish November, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. I love this football team. I still believe in Dabo Swinney, but some things obviously have to change. I mean, you look at our recruiting class. We have 5 decommitments in the 2025 recruiting class. When's the last time you saw that happen at Clemson?
Right. There's some things.
We were always the one touting like, oh, once somebody commits to Clemson, they never decommit. Now in this class alone, we got 5, including our sole quarterback.
Right.
There's erosion. There's things slipping. You can see it.
And what's interesting about that is when you bring up a decommitment, what's the first words out of someone's mouth? Oh, well, they were offered more money. And it's like, okay, I mean, this is the new college terrain. I'm not a fan of it, but
I'm not a fan of it.
Right. I mean, it's just like, I don't know. Well, Tiger Paw Craven, tell us where we can find you guys.
Yeah, we're over on the Voice of College Football page. Obviously, Clemson at the Voice of College Football. If you search that in YouTube, you will find me and Jordan's page. We do an all-in show every Wednesday at 8 p.m., and we do a recap show or a post-game live show, giving our raw, unfiltered reaction to every single Clemson game. You missed a good one this past Saturday. We had a ton of people in there. So I hope you guys will come by, check out our channel, consider subscribing, and we appreciate it.
Everybody drop over there. Man, it's always a pleasure to have you on, and you've been a friend of mine for a very, very long time and a supporter of my channel. So I'd really, really do appreciate it. Everybody drop over there. Let them know that you saw. Well, let them know that you saw them on my channel. And if you haven't subscribed, I hope you will subscribe to them. Hey, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, I hope you will. It's the sweetest words in the English language. Free. It is free. So go ahead and do that. Folks, you take care of yourself. And as always, go Tigers.